Right guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm working on the Triumph again today. I'm starting to get the bike really how I want it now. I've shortened the chain, you've seen that in the other video. I've got the 180/60 tyre test fitted. That all fits lovely, so that's ideal. Now I'm really starting to do basically so as it passes the regs for racing. So there's quite a few things involved in that. I've got to remove all the lights, so lights, indicators, rear light, and then you've got to remove the cat. So if your bike's fitted with a cat, which a lot of modern bikes are, you've got to remove that because it's a fire hazard because they get really hot, the cats. What I've got to do is remove this exhaust, and then this section here is the cat. So I'm going to cut that and cut that once it's off and weld in this piece. But it gives me a chance to do a couple of other things as well, because you're only allowed to run water. Basically, you're not allowed to run antifreeze, because if you have a spill, then antifreeze is super slippery. So I'm going to need to take the rad off anyway to get in behind it to get to the headers. So when I drain the coolant out, sort of two jobs at once really. Now, one of the known things on these 675s is the nuts always corrode up quite bad on the headers, so I'm hoping I can get away with just cutting them off and rethreading them, but it might be the point where I've got to replace the studs, in which case that'll make the job a bit longer. But it's better to get it done now pre-season than it is to be trying to do that like a week before, you know, my first race if I go into one. So I'll crack on with that now and you can see how I get on. Take the cap off. There we go. That's the horn disconnected. The rad is now removed. Look at all this, because it's been a Street Fighter style for a while. It's not had a fairing or anything to cover over the front. All the mud comes up in here, so I can give that a good wash out. As you can see, the header nuts, they are very, very rusty. I've obviously removed the radiator, which is down here. Soak them in lube. Now I'm just going to put a socket on this nut here, which is one of the better looking nuts, and just see if it will actually undo. Right guys, you're looking at some new studs in the head there. Now it's taken me a little while to get to this point because the rusty nuts and studs that were fitting there before were an absolute bugger to remove. So I went to remove the first one with my socket. Nope, that did not go very well. It just snapped off in the end of the socket like that. So I decided I cut each of the nuts off, which is what you can see here. So after that I was just left with the studs poking out. I then decided that the best course of action was to try and remove the studs, obviously because they're all pretty rusty and manky. I managed to use my stud remover, which is like a reverse threaded drill chuck. So basically as you undo it, it gets tighter but in the undoing direction. So it came out nice and easy like that. I say nice and easy, I still had to heat up around the outside of the stud and undo it. However, two of them then decided to snap off when I was doing that, so then I was left with 4 studs in the head. Then another 2 look like this. So essentially what I did was weld nuts onto the end and then crack them off like that. However, doing that again, only 2 of them came out, so then I was left with the last 2, which was that one and that one. And in the end I did have to just sit there and drill away and then get a tap down it. And luckily I've saved most of the thread without having to put a helicoil in. This one here is a little bit ever so slightly not square with the rest of them, so I've got to see if it pulls up tight. Hopefully it does. I've just ordered some new gaskets from Fowler's because you can't seem to get these little round gaskets that go in here, but they're only 16 quid delivered from Fowler's, so they should be here soon. And then I'm gonna actually crack on and cut the cat out of here. I'm currently just mocking up the decat, so I've put the end can on and just cable tied it over in the right position. I've slotted in the bit that needs to go in there. When the manifold is off, I cut the cat off. That was that way around like that. That was in there, something like that. So that used to live up in here like that. So I've chopped that out, and now I'm going to weld in just a straight piece and a tapered piece. So I'm going to tack it all up in place and then I'll take it right off and weld it all up. Right, so things are going well. I've got the manifold back on with my nice new gaskets from Fowler's. They were quick to turn up, to be fair. I had to do a little bit of filing on one of the holes for the manifold there just because of that stud I talked about that was slightly off center or off, you know, not quite square, but it was hardly anything. It's only a few mil. That slotted over nice. Obviously got the rad back on, got the front wheel nut back on, and yeah, as you can see, I've welded up my own decap pipe. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but there'll be a under tray stroke fairing on to cover that anyway, because you need to have a oil catch tray for the racing, and it's a good thing to have anyway, so you won't see any of that. The can's back on. I did have to replace the bolt in there because the old bolt was pretty knackered, so you have to ignore that. I'm going to get another bolt for that. So I think we should see how it runs. That's the end of part 1 of my race prep. Hopefully in the next video I'll be showing you just the service bits I'm doing. After that I'll be the sort of second half of the race prep, everything that's left to do. So what I'm going to do about the fairing, lock wiring, and just getting a rain light, all the little bits and bobs like that. So yeah, keep tuned in.